What up, Logan? Welcome back to the channel. Oh my god, that's a loud... Is that a Nissan Navara? Today we're going to be attempting, keyword attempting, to paint this bumper right here. This is a gorgeous $175 Amazon M3 bumper. In last week's episode, we unboxed it, installed it on the car, checked all the panel gaps, everything looked surprisingly good for such a cheap bumper. But now comes the real trick. You see, initially, I was just going to get it professionally painted like a normal person. But when I called around to all of the local body shops, quotes ranged from $400 at the bare minimum to about $700. I even called Mako. I was that desperate. They told me $600. I thought Mako would paint like a whole car for like 20 bucks. But alas, we're gonna have to do it ourselves. I think the silver lining of doing all of the paint prep and all of the paint matching ourselves is that it gives us a brand new tool on the tool belt, so to speak. And now going forward, if we ever want anything paint matched again, hopefully we'll have the skills to do so. Now, paint matching for my car in particular is a little weird because it's kind of a weird color. You can see Dory, the E36, all the way down there. Come on, focus. There she is, no front bumper, still looking beautiful. Right here, I have the OEM bumper. This color is called Moria Green. It's kind of a cool greenish blue, and it's surprisingly a tiny bit tricky to find paint-matched paint for this color. Now, I'm gonna be trying to do this entire thing with rattle cans. Bear with me, I don't have a paint gun, I do have access to a compressor, but I thought this would be a more fun kind of DIY version of it, and I'm a little bit too lazy to do a full painting process, so I think I'll just make my life a lot harder and do it all with spray cans. Honestly, who knows if it's gonna work, but here are all of my paint supplies. Here we have the Moria Green from Express Paint, I guess. Obviously not sponsored. Here is where I did a test spray out the other day. It honestly looks, pretty darn good. If anything, it's maybe slightly darker than the paint on the car, which makes sense because it's a 1998 car. Obviously, the paint will have changed a little bit, faded a little bit over time. But the balance from blue to green on this spray out, at least, looks actually pretty good. Ooh. But my first order of business is to use this painter's plastic to set up like a big perimeter, like our own paint booth, you know? And hopefully that'll seal everything in, keep the dust off the paint as we're working with it. So I think that is our first order of business. I need to get that set up. Let's do that right now, and then we'll get into the fun paint and prep process. Okay, I'm back inside where it's warm, but I just finished setting everything up. It's time for the big reveal. Look at this. As you can see, I got a light set up, the bumper's all laid out. I got a little space heater to hopefully warm it up in here so we can kind of bake the paint at each step. But it's getting weirdly dark all of a sudden. I totally forgot that it gets dark at like 4:30 right now. So I may just do a little bit of cleaning and prep on the bumper tonight and then do the actual painting process tomorrow. Overall, I'm relatively happy with how our booth turned out. There's a lot of relatively shoddy workmanship when it comes to the duct tape job, but I'm pretty proud of this. This doorway is weighted with a bunch of duct tape so that when you drop it, it falls straight down and seals off this corner. That's my proud engineering moment of the day. Okay, I think I'm gonna wash down the bumper, maybe scuff it up a little bit. I'm not sure how far I'm gonna get tonight because it is getting dark and a little bit cold out, so let's get going. Good morning, Logang. It's the next day, feeling rested, relaxed. Bumper is looking great. It's looking all clean. I have a couple more steps. I gotta isopropyl alcohol it. I gotta wax and grease remover it. Then we'll scuff the whole thing down, and then we'll get into painting. All right, let's do it. of the color is finally on. I still had trouble with spider cracking in the primer. Gonna remember the name for primer. I think these fumes are getting to my head. Anyway, I just painted over it. I know that's not the right thing to do. I should have sanded it back and reprimed it. The issue was that I put too much adhesion promoter on it. I laid way too thick a coat on. And so as that dried, it shrunk and cracked the primer that I laid on top of it. Now that I've painted over it with the base color, it looks fine, whatever. And once we get clear coat on there, and in a couple weeks, I'll cut and polish it all. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I feel like it doesn't need to be perfect, you know what I mean? It's a front bumper, so it's gonna get scratched up, it's gonna get dinged anyway. And this is more about the learning experience than having like a perfect bumper, because God knows nothing else on the car is like perfect. It's nice, but none of it is perfect. The paint, you know, has some chips here and there. Anyway, next step is clear, and that's what I'm most worried about, just because of the toxic fumes. I think it'll be all right. I got a bunch of fans set up around the apartment, so that'll evacuate some of the fumey air. And this thing has been a real blessing when I'm in the booth, so to speak. I can't smell anything. And the second I come inside and take it off, I can smell fumes like crazy. So I know it's doing its job. Anyway, I'm gonna hang out for another 45 minutes, and then we're gonna spray the 2K clear on there, maybe do a couple coats of that, and call it good. It's been a couple days. All the paint, all the clear coat, everything is dry. It's mounted up to the car and it looks gorgeous. It's right behind the camera and it just looks perfect. It doesn't look perfect. There are definitely some problems, but I'm gonna talk about those in a second. First, you've waited long enough. Here's the big reveal. There it is, finally completed, the beautiful Amazon M3 bumper. For the amount of money I spent, or rather the amount of money that I saved, I honestly really like the results. In total, I spent around $250-ish. That was for all of the prep materials, all of the paint, all of the primer, all of the clear coat. So I spent roughly half of what I would have if I had gone to a regular body shop. Now, obviously that comes with its downsides. The first of which is the actual color matching. It may not show up on camera, but this is ever so slightly darker than this. And I mentioned this earlier in the video. It makes a lot of sense because all of this is from 1998. This was a California car for the majority of its life, so it was sitting out in the sun a lot. So for all I know, this could be an absolutely perfect paint match. It just looks ever so slightly darker than the Moria Green from 1998. Makes sense. I think if I weren't looking for it, it's not something that would stick out to me, and that's basically all I can ask for from a spray can paint match over the internet. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is that spider cracking in the primer that I mentioned. That actually turned out a lot better than I thought it would. Most of the spider cracking actually is kind of tucked behind the license plate conveniently. Now luckily I have an example down here of what it looked like, and let me see if I can even find it. Deep in there, I don't know if you can see that. Deep underneath the clear coat, there's just a tiny bit of texture. There is where you can really see it, where it catches the light there. Running my finger over it, it's completely smooth. The combination of a couple layers of base coat plus a couple layers of thick clear coat completely smoothed it over. That's just one of those tiny mistakes I'm just gonna have to live with, and again, makes sense for the amount of money that I spent. Last thing I want to talk about is this front lip. I talked about this in last week's bumper install video, but this is one of the major downsides of this $175 Amazon M3 bumper, is that front lip isn't removable like it is on an OEM M-Tech or M3 bumper. Initially, I was a little bit bummed because I wanted to run a big fat lip on the front of this car, and most of those bigger lips totally replace that OEM lip. But honestly, now that I've painted over the thing, I actually really like the way that it turned out. A big problem that I've always had with E36 bumpers is that they're a little bit short, especially compared to the side skirts. So the side skirts always come down lower than the bottom of the bumper. Now the M3 bumper helps this, but when you have a black lip on the bottom, it visually totally compresses the front of the car. And paint matching this has definitely helped to kind of bring the nose of the car down in a way that I really like. Also coming up, we're gonna do kind of a protective lip DIY video. I think it's gonna be really cool and it's gonna work much better with the paint matched lip. So I have fully come to terms with the integrated Amazon lip. It doesn't bother me anymore and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Okay, if you have any questions about the painting process or the bumper or anything to do with this car, leave them down in the comments below. I would be happy to answer anything. As you can see, I'm clearly not a professional at this, but if it helps you with your buying process or your painting process or whatever, I'd be glad to give my input. Okay, that's it for today's video. If you like the video, make sure to like the video. If you really like the video, make sure to subscribe. I make a new video every single week. Thank you so much for spending your time watching this video, and I will see you next time. Peace!